Have you ever felt like life took something from you that you'll never get back? A relationship, a dream, a sense of peace, an opportunity, a version of yourself you barely remember. Have you ever looked back at a chapter in your life and thought, why did this happen to me? Why was it taken? And why does it still hurt? What if I told you that nothing truly leaves you forever? That everything you've lost isn't gone. It's waiting, transforming, and destined to return, multiplied in a form you may not yet recognize. There's a wisdom that echoes through ancient teachings, sacred texts, and the hearts of mystics and philosophers alike. What is yours by right of soul, by divine intention, will find its way back to you in time. And when it does, it arrives greater, fuller, and purer than you ever imagined. History is filled with stories of loss that became legend, of people who were stripped of everything only to rise stronger, wiser, and richer in ways they could not have foreseen. Think of Job in the ancient scriptures, a man who lost his family, wealth, health, and reputation, yet whose restoration was so profound it was said to be sevenfold. His suffering became the soil in which something greater took root. That pattern, though ancient, is not unique to legend. It is the architecture of life itself. You may be walking through a season right now where doors have closed, friendships have faded, dreams you held close slipped through your fingers, and you find yourself questioning your worth, your path, and your future. But here's the truth you need to anchor yourself to. The universe, fate, the divine, whatever name you give it, is not a cruel thief. It is a patient gardener, and sometimes it must strip the branches bare to prepare you for a greater bloom. The wisdom of ancient mystics teaches that life moves in cycles. Nothing is static. What is lost in one season returns in another. Often, what we call loss is merely a sacred exchange, a temporary absence to make space for abundance. Imagine a tree in autumn. Its leaves fall, not because it is dying, but because it is preparing to survive the winter and emerge renewed in spring. In the same way, what leaves your life is often clearing the way for a return multiplied. But in the silence that follows loss, we forget this. Pain speaks loudly. Absence feels eternal. The mind clings to what was and struggles to believe that something better could ever arrive. Yet it's precisely in these quiet, empty spaces that transformation works in secret. The seed dies before it rises. The night deepens before the dawn breaks. And so it is with every part of your life. When you lose something, whether by choice, force, or circumstance, it initiates a spiritual equation. What departs must either be replaced or reborn in greater form. It is a law not written in books, but engraved in the structure of the universe itself. Energy is never destroyed, only transferred, transformed. And so are the things of your soul, your loves, your ambitions, your peace. They may leave for a time, but they are not annihilated. They are merely in transition. Ancient philosophers understood this principle. The Stoics taught that, while external things come and go, it is how we respond that determines our fate. Marcus Aurelius wrote that what stands in the way becomes the way. That adversity itself carries the seed of its opposite, renewal. Loss creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. What is emptied will be refilled. The only question is whether you will be ready to receive it when it returns. Divine multiplication is not merely the restoration of what was taken. It is the increase of what matters most. What you gain in return will not always look like what you lost. A broken relationship might be followed by a deeper connection with yourself. A missed opportunity might lead to a calling more aligned with your soul's purpose. Financial hardship may strip you of material comforts only to teach you the value of things money can never buy. What returns is not always identical, but it is always abundant in wisdom. Consider the ancient wisdom of karmic balance. It teaches that the energy you give, the pain you endure, and the goodness you sow all circle back, multiplied, though not always in the ways or timelines you expect. The mystics of old spoke of the law of return, that what leaves must come back with greater force. Every act of patience in suffering, every refusal to give in to bitterness, every quiet act of hope plants a seed in unseen soil. And in time, the harvest comes. The problem is never whether restoration exists, but whether we recognize it when it arrives. Too often, we search for the old form, the same face, the same job, the same kind of love, and fail to see the divine multiplication happening in unexpected shapes. We miss the miracle because we're looking for the familiar. But divine return rarely repeats itself. It elevates, expands, and surprises. In moments of deepest emptiness, you are being prepared. It may feel like punishment, but it is often preparation. The things you mourn might be things you would have outgrown. The paths you miss might have led you away from your destiny. Life removes what can no longer stay so it can gift you what you could not have imagined. Look to the rhythms of nature for proof. The caterpillar's end is the butterfly's beginning. The tide withdraws only to return stronger. The darkest nights carry the promise of dawn. Every ending conceals a new beginning, waiting to reveal itself when you are ready to see it. You are not forgotten. What belongs to you by the design of your destiny will not be kept from you. It may be delayed, it may be reshaped, but it cannot be denied. The ancient sages said that fate bends to the will of the steadfast heart. What you hold to with quiet faith, what you refuse to curse in its absence, will find its way home. And when it does, it brings companions, lessons, strength, clarity, gifts you would never have sought but will one day be grateful for. This is not blind optimism. It is the hard-earned wisdom of generations. The understanding that life's most painful subtractions precede its most meaningful additions. That every time you are emptied, it is a prelude to being filled with something deeper. The key is trust, not in naive certainty, but in the faithful unfolding of things beyond your current sight. The temptation in loss is to retreat, to close your heart, to swear off hope. But to do so is to delay the return, because the open heart is a vessel. Closed hands cannot receive. The soul that clings to what was cannot embrace what will be. And so the sacred practice is to grieve honestly, but hold space for the possible. To mourn what's gone while making room for what's coming. In the space between what you've lost and what will return, there exists a sacred silence, a stillness where the unseen is already at work. You may not feel it, you may not see it, but beneath the surface of your daily life, threads are being rewoven, doors are being crafted, and moments are aligning. Every disappointment you've endured, every ending you've survived, quietly contributes to the shape of what's ahead. The ancients believed this silence was not emptiness, but gestation. The universe, like any great artist, works in quiet before it reveals its masterpiece. One of the hardest truths you'll face is that the seasons of waiting are just as important as the seasons of abundance. We've been conditioned by modern culture to expect instant returns, immediate resolutions, and quick replacements for what leaves us. But ancient wisdom teaches otherwise. In every culture, From the meditations of Eastern sages to the writings of Western philosophers, there's an acknowledgement that wisdom grows in the dark. That character is forged in absence, not excess. That the soul expands not when it has everything, but when it must learn to live with less. Consider how a seed must first disappear beneath the soil before it can rise as a tree. It must split, dissolve, and relinquish its original form. This process is neither easy nor visible, and yet it's essential. The same is true for you. Loss, in whatever form it takes, marks the breaking of old patterns. It forces the death of identities that no longer serve your highest self. It clears away the noise so that you can finally hear the voice of your soul. Most of us resist this stripping away. We cling to what was because it feels safer than the unknown. But the unknown is the birthplace of miracles. Ancient mystics taught that the divine speaks most clearly in the emptiness, because in the absence of distraction, you are finally still enough to listen. In that stillness, clarity arrives, strength grows, and you realize that what you thought was the end was always a passage. There's a beautiful paradox here. It's often the moment you stop chasing what was that the new begins to unfold. Not because you've given up, but because you've surrendered your need to control the form of your return. True divine multiplication requires letting go of the old mold. It demands that you release the expectation that what is coming will look like what was lost. This act of surrender is not weakness, but alignment. The ancient Stoics advised a practice known as amor fati, the love of fate. It wasn't passive resignation, but an active embrace of whatever life brought. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything thrown into it. That is your calling, to take even your losses, your heartbreak, your disappointments, and transform them into light. To become so resilient, so inwardly steady, that nothing is wasted. Every grief, every closed door, every betrayal is repurposed into wisdom. But let's be honest, this doesn't happen by accident. It requires conscious participation. You must choose, day after difficult day, to hold space for the unseen. To trust that the work is happening behind the curtain, even when your external world remains unchanged. This is the labor of faith. Not blind belief in easy miracles, but fierce, unyielding hope rooted in the patterns of nature, history, and your own past comebacks. Because if you look closely, you'll see you've been here before. You've survived losses you thought would undo you. You've endured nights you were certain would never end. And yet, here you are, which means some form of return already happened. It might not have looked like what you expected. Perhaps it was subtler, a new strength, a quiet peace, a deeper wisdom. But it came, and it always will. Ancient wisdom reminds us that life is not linear. It spirals, it circles back. What feels lost may return in a different season, wearing a new face, carrying a richer meaning. Or it may return to you in the form of something else entirely, a blessing disguised as a new path, a friend, a chance, a revelation. The soul's treasures are rarely restored in identical packaging, because the old form was meant for your old self, and you are not who you were. Every experience of loss reshapes you. Every empty space demands to be filled. The question is with what? You can fill it with bitterness, with endless longing, with grief that calcifies into cynicism. Or you can fill it with faith, curiosity, and readiness. The way you fill the empty places determines the quality of what will return to occupy them. A heart softened by wisdom will receive abundance differently than one hardened by resentment. This is why ancient philosophers, mystics, and sages emphasized inner work above outer gain. Because the external things of life, wealth, love, recognition, are transient. What endures is the quality of your soul, your character, your capacity for compassion and resilience. These are the things that grow in absence. These are the multipliers. When divine return arrives, it seeks fertile ground. It lands best in hearts that have remained open in spite of pain. It multiplies in souls that refuse to surrender their hope. It pours itself into lives that stayed awake during the dark nights of waiting, that whispered yes to life even when life said no. And the paradox is, by the time it comes, you may no longer crave the old things. You'll crave deeper things, not just what you want, but what your soul needs. The most important preparation you can make for what is coming is to become the version of yourself that can hold it well. Because abundance without wisdom is a burden. Restoration without growth is temporary. What good is it to regain what you lost if you've not become someone wiser, kinder, and more awake to the fragile beauty of it all? The mystics taught that all things lost return to the seeker who has learned the lesson of their absence. This is the pattern of sacred restoration. Lose, learn, rise, and receive. And what you receive after you've grown will always be greater than what you lost before you knew. So if you are in a season of emptiness, trust this: the silence is not the absence of activity. It is the preparation of abundance. The empty hands you hold now are being shaped to grasp the multiplied gifts that await. The absence you feel is not an end, but a sacred pause before the surge. Stay ready. Stay open. Speak gratitude into the void. Remember the wisdom of those who walked before you. What is yours by destiny cannot be taken from you forever. It will return, not as it was, but as something better. And when it comes, you will know why it had to leave. Because only now are you ready to hold it. And when it comes, you'll understand that every unanswered prayer, every delayed blessing, every heartbreak and detour were never meant to break you. They were meant to build you. You'll see how the things you once clung to would have limited you. How the doors that shut protected you from places your spirit was never meant to stay. How the things you lost were not stolen, but surrendered by the hand of wisdom you couldn't yet recognize. And you'll find yourself grateful not only for what returned, but for the absence that shaped you in its waiting. Ancient wisdom reminds us again and again. It is not what you lose that defines you, but how you carry the loss, how you move through absence, how you keep your heart open when every instinct urges you to close it. The mystics said the wound is where the light enters you, that the cracks in your heart are where the divine sneaks through when you least expect it. And it's often in those moments of brokenness that you realize you are not broken at all. You are becoming. The cycle is sacred. Loss leads to reflection. Reflection leads to growth. Growth makes room for greater return. And what returns multiplies not just in size, but in depth. It's no longer about getting back what was taken. It's about becoming someone so aligned with your soul's purpose that only what belongs to that higher version of you can remain. Everything else falls away, not as punishment, but as protection. When you look back from the other side, you'll see the thread, the precise way events unfolded, the exact timing of losses and gains, the people who left just before someone new arrived, the opportunities that closed so something unexpected could find you. And you'll realize it was never random. It was never cruel. It was choreography, a pattern designed not for your comfort, but for your becoming. Ancient texts often speak of divine multiplication as not only the return of what was lost, but the increase of its meaning. A field that lay barren for 7 seasons yields a richer harvest. A heart that grieved grows in tenderness and resilience. A mind emptied of old certainties makes room for wisdom it once resisted. And so, the restoration you await will not simply replace what was gone. It will elevate it. But to be ready for this, you must choose to release resentment. Nothing delays abundance more than bitterness. The soul, weighed down by what it was owed, or what it deserved, cannot rise to meet the blessings being prepared. Forgiveness, both of life and of yourself, is not about excusing pain, but about unbinding your future from your past. The wisdom traditions knew this well. That surrender is not a defeat, but a declaration of faith. Not passive acceptance, but active alignment. A way of saying, I do not need to see it now to trust that it is coming. I do not require proof before I prepare the room. I will set the table for blessings I have not yet touched, speak gratitude for gifts I have not yet received, and keep a light burning for the things destined to find me in their own perfect hour. And perhaps most beautiful of all is that when the return comes, it rarely feels urgent. You no longer need it to fill a hole because in your waiting, you became whole. The abundance is no longer a remedy for emptiness, but an enhancement to a fullness already built within you. That is the essence of divine multiplication. It does not come to the desperate, but to the steady, to the one who learned to be enough while lacking, to the soul who refused to trade hope for certainty. And so I tell you now, everything you lost will return, though not always in the form you expect. It will arrive clothed in new names, new faces, new opportunities, shaped to fit the person you've become, not the one you were. And it will bring with it lessons, gifts, and wisdom you could never have gathered if what was lost had stayed. This is the promise life makes to the enduring heart, to the soul that continues to rise to hope, to trust when there is no reason to. You will be restored, you will be increased, and you will understand the why behind the waiting, not because the pain was deserved, but because the absence was necessary for your next chapter. The path is not easy. Loss is not gentle, and waiting is rarely graceful, but it is holy. It is the unseen architecture of your destiny, shaping you in ways comfort never could. Stay faithful in the emptiness. Speak gratitude in the silence, and ready yourself for a return that will leave you in awe. Because everything you lost will return, not as a simple restoration, but with divine multiplication. Not to make up for what was taken, but to fulfill what you were always meant to carry. Now, I want to hear from you. What loss in your life do you feel still echoes in your heart? And what do you imagine it might look like when it returns, multiplied, wiser, and more aligned with who you've become? Share your story in the comments, because your voice might be the light someone else is waiting to see in their darkness.